Welcome to the Stoic Tide. Have you ever cared so much that it started to hurt? You wake up already carrying the weight of everyone's moods, their silence, their judgment, their needs. You call it love, loyalty, kindness. But deep down it feels like losing yourself piece by piece. Maybe it's time to ask what would happen if you stopped chasing peace in others and started finding it within. Let's step into the first lesson where many lose their peace without even realizing it. Imagine standing in a crowded room trying to keep every face smiling, every voice satisfied, every silence filled. You offer your best, your kindness, your patience, until there's nothing left of you but a reflection shaped by other people's expectations. You think you're being loyal, compassionate, understanding, but slowly you begin to notice the weight in your chest, that quiet exhaustion that no amount of sleep can fix. That's not peace. That's the burden of trying to please the world. Have you ever noticed how some people can drain your spirit without saying a word? A friend who never calls back. A relative who always finds fault. A coworker who smiles in front of you but sharpens their tongue behind your back. You replay conversations in your head, wondering if you said something wrong, if you could have done more, if maybe you were the problem, but you weren't. The problem is that you've handed over your peace to people who never earned that privilege. You gave them access to your emotions as if their approval could somehow define your worth. Epictetus once said, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, remember that your mind was complicit." And that's the truth. No one can steal your calm unless you open the door yourself. Now imagine this. You stand before a mirror and see not just your reflection, but every version of you that tried to be liked. The one who softened their voice so others wouldn't feel small. The one who smiled when they wanted to walk away. The one who dimmed their light so no one else would feel overshadowed. Each version stands there waiting to be released. That's the moment of awakening. The moment you whisper, "I've cared enough." Seneca once wrote, "He who seeks the approval of many ends up a slave to all." You can spend your entire life adjusting yourself to fit into shapes that were never meant for you, and still someone will find fault. You could pour out your heart, act with kindness, and yet be misunderstood. That's the nature of the world. People project their own chaos onto the calm they cannot comprehend. The Stoics knew this. The opinions of others belong to them, not to you. They are like the wind. You can feel them brush against your skin, but you don't have to let them carry you away. I once knew a man who spent years trying to earn his father's respect. He worked tirelessly, built a career, did everything right, yet the old man's approval never came. One day, exhausted, he stopped trying, not out of bitterness, but because he realized the peace he was chasing was his own reflection, waiting to be seen from within. That day, he walked lighter. The world hadn't changed, he had. The truth is, when you live for applause, you become addicted to noise. Every cheer lifts you. Every silence breaks you. But the one who lives by stoic virtue learns a higher kind of freedom to act from principle, not from praise. Marcus Aurelius said, "It never ceases to amaze me." We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own. That's the contradiction of the human heart. You must decide whose voice you will live by. The moment you stop trying to make everyone happy, you start seeing yourself clearly. The fog lifts. You no longer edit your personality to fit their comfort. You no longer trade your authenticity for acceptance. You begin to understand that real love, real friendship, real respect never demands you shrink to be tolerated. The ones who truly value you will meet you as you are, not as they imagine you should be. The rest, let them fall away. So stop chasing approval. Stop seeking validation from those who haven't even learned to validate themselves. The opinions of the crowd are fleeting, but the peace of self-respect endures. When you let go of the need to be liked, you make space for something greater, to be whole. This is where the true journey begins. The day you stop caring how others see you is the day you start seeing yourself. The world may still talk, but their words will echo in the distance, powerless against your silence. Because a calm mind anchored in truth no longer bends for applause. It simply stands steady, still, and free. Moving into the second chapter, this is where compassion begins to hurt. You've tried to be the anchor in other people's storms, holding on until your own hands bled. You carried their chaos on your back, believing love meant saving them from themselves. Every time they cried, you showed up. Every time they promised to change, you believed. And every time they returned to the same patterns, you blamed yourself for not being enough. But here's the truth. Few are ready to hear. You can't rescue someone who is comfortable drowning. Imagine pulling a man from a river only to have him dive back in moments later. You call it loyalty, empathy, friendship. But the Stoics would call it attachment to illusion. Epictetus taught, When you desire to save what is not in your power, you destroy both yourself and your peace. The weight you carry is not noble when it robs you of clarity. There's a difference between helping and becoming a hostage to someone else's suffering. And you know this. You felt the fatigue that doesn't come from work, but from emotional overextension, the kind that leaves your soul empty and your heart restless. There's a story of a teacher who once tried to lift every student out of failure. He stayed late, sacrificed sleep, poured himself into their lessons. Yet the same faces returned with the same excuses. One evening he sat alone in the quiet classroom and finally understood his duty was to teach, not to drag others toward the will to learn. A man can only carry another so far before he sinks too. Seneca would have said, "The one who helps all loses himself in all." That realization doesn't make you cold, it makes you wise. So ask yourself, how many times have you mistaken rescuing for love? How many times have you confused sacrifice with virtue? There's a dangerous pride hidden in constant giving. The belief that your effort can rewrite another's destiny. But no matter how much you pour, an empty vessel remains empty until it decides to be filled. You can't heal those who still cling to their pain like a familiar friend. You can guide but not walk for them. You can show the flame but not force them to see its light. The Stoics understood that freedom begins where control ends. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Each man's life is dyed the color of his own thoughts." You cannot repaint another soul without first letting them hold the brush. Every time you rescue someone from their own consequences, you interrupt the lesson the universe has placed before them. And when lessons are skipped, suffering repeats. To truly love someone is not to shield them from pain, but to allow them to meet it. To stand beside them, not in front of them. There comes a moment when you wake and realize you've been pouring from a well that's gone dry. You've given your listening, your energy, your peace, and in return, silence. The same people you would have fought for won't even notice your absence. That is when the inner voice of wisdom whispers, "This is not strength. This is surrender of the wrong kind." Stoic compassion is not endless sacrifice. It's measured love, steady, firm, and bounded by reason. You're not cruel for stepping back. You are preserving the only instrument through which you can still do good yourself. If you continue to give without discernment, you trade your serenity for someone else's stagnation. And when you're drained, no one benefits. The Stoic doesn't harden his heart. He tempers it. He helps where help can grow and steps away where help becomes enabling. Because real aid demands balance, mercy guided by discipline, empathy guided by wisdom. So let them walk their own path. Even if it's lined with mistakes, let them fall if falling is what teaches them to rise. You are not the savior of every soul. You are responsible for your own. Offer a hand, not a lifeboat. Offer truth, not rescue. That's how a Stoic loves. With courage to care and the strength to let go. And when you finally stop carrying what was never yours to bear, you'll feel something you may have forgotten long ago. The lightness of peace returning to your own shoulders. Advancing to the third chapter. This is where distraction wears the mask of compassion. You begin by caring, a noble act. You want to be thoughtful, aware, kind. But somewhere along the way that care turns into noise. You start scanning the room for approval instead of direction. You look outward when your focus was meant to face inward. Every glance, every opinion, every silence becomes a mirror you're trapped inside. You check who noticed your effort, who stayed quiet, who withdrew. And without realizing it, your peace becomes a public square open for everyone's judgment to walk through. Now imagine a traveler walking down a mountain path, focused and steady, when suddenly voices from the valley start calling his name. Some praise, some mock, some question. He pauses to listen, and each pause makes the mountain steeper. That's what happens when you care too much about what others think. Every opinion becomes a stone in your pocket. Every glance another weight on your back. The Stoics warned us about this long ago. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own." When you let external noise steer your mind, you stop living deliberately. You start performing life instead of living it. I once knew a man who would change his tone, his posture, even his dreams, depending on who stood before him. Around his family, he was obedient. Around his friends, confident. Around strangers, silent. He wore masks so often he forgot what his real face looked like. And one night he confessed quietly, "I'm exhausted. I don't even know what's truly mine anymore." That's the hidden cost of caring too much. You lose the thread that connects you to yourself. Epictetus taught that freedom is the right to choose whose opinions matter. When you grant that right to everyone, you lose sovereignty over your own mind. Most people aren't even watching you. They're too busy worrying about their own insecurities. Those who criticize loudly are often battling their own unseen chaos. Their judgment says more about their inner storms than your worth. Yet still you keep building a temple in your mind to host their thoughts. You decorate it with doubt, furnish it with fear, and call it humility. But it's not humility, it's captivity. The Stoic life demands attention, not obsession. Focus, not fixation. Every time you wonder what others think, you move an inch away from your purpose. Progress is quiet, but ego is loud. Ask yourself, who are you living for? Whose applause dictates your pace? The moment you start building your life on the opinions of others, you abandon the only foundation that can hold you, your own reason. Seneca said, "He who follows another not only loses his way but loses himself." To live freely, you must be willing to disappoint those who misunderstand your silence. There's a kind of peace that comes the day you stop explaining. You stop rehearsing conversations in your mind. You stop chasing validation from those who can't even validate their own choices. You begin to understand that not every silence is rejection. Sometimes it's just space. And in that space, you can breathe again. The opinions fade, the noise settles, and what remains is clarity. The rare kind that only comes from detachment. From here, you walk differently. Your step gains weight. Your words slow down. You start living for truth, not applause. You realize that people's approval is like the wind. It changes direction with every season. You can't build your peace on something that fickle. The Stoic builds his house on inner strength, not on shifting noise. The one who minds his own progress becomes unstoppable, because his compass no longer points to the crowd. It points within. So when the voices grow loud again, let them. Don't fight them. Don't feed them. Just keep walking, because the moment you stop caring about what others think, you reclaim your sight. You see your purpose clearly. You act without hesitation. And that is when the world for the first time begins to take you seriously, not because you begged for its attention, but because you no longer need it. Entering the 4th chapter. This is where your peace begins to depend on discernment. You've given so much of yourself to others that you've forgotten. Not everyone deserves access to your spirit. You offer your time, your kindness, your patience, and what do some people do? They take. They take until there's nothing left but silence in your chest and questions in your mind. You wonder why they don't show up when you need them. Why they vanish when life turns dark. You tell yourself they care just in their own way. But the truth is colder and simpler. Some people love what you give, not who you are. Now imagine a fire in an open field. At first it burns bright, giving warmth to everyone who passes by. But slowly the crowd grows. They hold their hands out for the heat. They stand close. They take and none bring wood to keep it alive. By the end, the flame shrinks into smoke. That's what happens when you give your energy to those who only stand near for their comfort, not for your growth. Seneca warned, "Associate with those who may make you better and welcome those whom you can make better. Anything else is waste disguised as duty." I once met a woman who was everyone's savior, always answering calls, fixing problems, filling gaps. Her kindness was her pride until it became her prison. One day she confessed she no longer recognized her own voice. She'd become an echo of other people's needs. That's the quiet tragedy of overgiving, when your light feeds others but leaves you in the dark. The Stoics understood this well. They taught that your energy, like your virtue, is sacred. You guard it not out of selfishness but out of wisdom. A river that gives without restraint soon runs dry. There's a painful lesson in realizing not everyone is meant to walk beside you. Some are lessons, not companions. Some awaits you were never meant to carry. Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." The same is true of company. You become dyed by the energy you keep. When you surround yourself with those who complain, who take, who drain, your own clarity fades, and no matter how strong your heart, it cannot stay pure. In a place where chaos feeds freely, you must learn to step back, not out of pride, but preservation. Ask yourself, who truly matches your effort? Who listens when you speak without needing anything in return? Who respects your silence as much as your giving? Those people are rare. Hold them close, but for the rest, let distance be your act of love. The Stoics' compassion is not endless exposure. It's deliberate generosity given with understanding, not guilt. You can care deeply without making yourself a well for those who never bring a cup. When you withdraw your energy from those who abuse it, you make room for something better. People who bring calm instead of confusion, honesty instead of flattery, presence instead of performance. The moment you stop trying to prove your worth to the ungrateful, you discover a quiet power, your own self-respect. That is where real peace begins. Epictetus reminded his students, You become what you give your attention to. Give your attention to those who elevate you, not those who empty you. Give your care to those who return it, not because you demand repayment, but because harmony demands balance. You are not a reservoir for endless taking. You are a source meant to flow toward meaning. So protect your energy like a sacred flame. Guard it from those who mistake kindness for weakness. Don't waste your strength trying to convince the blind of your worth. Your time is the currency of your soul. Spend it with intention. When you do, you'll find that solitude once feared becomes sanctuary. And from that stillness, the right people will appear. Those who don't drain your fire but help it burn brighter. Because when you learn who deserves your energy, you no longer chase peace. You become it. At this stage, we step into a quieter kind of struggle. The one between your heart and your fear. You've said yes when your soul whispered no. You've smiled when your spirit trembled. You've played peacekeeper in wars that were never yours to fight. You tell yourself it's kindness, that it's maturity, that it's the right thing to do. But deep down you know the truth. It isn't kindness. It's fear. Fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of being seen as difficult. But the Stoics would tell you fear disguised as kindness is still fear, and anything born from fear can never lead to peace. Now imagine standing in a room where every wall echoes with expectations. Everyone wants something from you. Approval, agreement, validation. You move carefully, watching every word, softening every truth. And with each compromise, you disappear a little more. This is the silent erosion of the self, a slow fading beneath the weight of wanting to belong. Seneca once said, "He who seeks to please all will please none, least of all himself." When you live to avoid rejection, you reject yourself first. You cannot stand firm on borrowed approval. There was a man I once knew who could not bear the thought of disappointing anyone. He bent himself into shapes that weren't his, agreed to things that hollowed him out, and silenced his instincts for the comfort of others. He told me, "I'm afraid that if I stop being agreeable, people will leave." And one day, when he finally spoke his truth, they did leave. Some in anger, others in silence. But something strange happened after that. He didn't collapse. He stood taller. He slept better. He realized that losing those who only stayed for convenience wasn't loss at all. It was clarity. Epictetus taught that no man is free who is not master of himself. You cannot master yourself while chained to the opinions of others. Every yes born from fear binds you tighter. Every silence that swallows your truth becomes another link in that chain. You start mistaking peace for avoidance. But peace built on suppression isn't peace, it's paralysis. The Stoics believed that courage is not the absence of fear, but the act of choosing virtue in spite of it. Courage is saying no when your heart is heavy. Courage is speaking when silence would be easier. Courage is standing firm when the crowd moves the other way. Ask yourself, what are you afraid of losing? Their approval or your integrity? Because one of them must go. You can't walk toward your higher purpose while carrying everyone's expectations on your back. Some people are not meant to continue the journey with you. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live." Every time you silence yourself to stay liked, you die a little in spirit. You delay the life that is waiting on the other side of your authenticity. When you stop performing, the wrong people will drift away. Let them. The ones who belong will not be frightened by your truth. They will not ask you to shrink for their comfort. They will love you for your stillness, your strength, your honesty, because authenticity repels the shallow and draws the real. There will come a moment when your voice shakes and your hands tremble, but you speak anyway, and that moment will mark the birth of your freedom. You'll learn that it was never rejection you feared. It was transformation. Once you stop living for approval, something extraordinary happens. You stop waiting for permission to exist. You no longer chase belonging because you have finally returned home to yourself. So speak your truth even when it trembles. Stand your ground even when it feels lonely. Let go of fitting in when you were meant to stand apart. The moment you choose truth over comfort, you cross the invisible line between fear and freedom. And that is where the Stoic stands, not above the noise but unmoved by it. Entering the 6th chapter, this is where the noise fades and the value of silence reveals itself. You've spent years reacting, explaining, defending, giving away your peace one response at a time. You cared about every rumor, every opinion, every passing word that questioned your worth. You wanted to be understood, to be seen in the right light, to prove you meant well. But there comes a moment when you realize that peace doesn't live in explanations. It lives in restraint. It lives in the quiet power of not needing to be everywhere, not needing to respond to everything, not needing to prove a thing. Now imagine a calm lake at dawn. The world around it is loud. Wind, birds, echoes of life, yet the surface remains still. That's the kind of strength Stoicism speaks of. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are disturbed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself but to your estimate of it. You suffer not because of the noise but because you invite it into your mind." The wise don't waste their calm on what's outside their control. They protect their peace like warriors guarding a fortress. Because when the walls fall, everything else follows. I once knew a man who couldn't bear silence. He answered every message the moment it came, defended himself against every misunderstanding, argued every rumor that questioned his name. His days were full of words, but his nights were empty. He mistook busyness for meaning. And when peace finally called, he couldn't hear it anymore. One evening, exhausted, he deleted his social accounts, stopped explaining, and began to walk every morning without his phone. The world didn't collapse. In fact, it barely noticed. But inside, something shifted. The noise fell away, and for the first time in years, he could hear his own thoughts again. That was the day he learned peace is not the reward for winning every argument. It's the victory of choosing none. The Stoics never chased the illusion of control. They knew that life storms were constant. Words, opinions, circumstances beyond reach. Their strength was built on one truth. We cannot choose what happens to us, but we can choose how we respond. Seneca warned that the mind that reacts to everything becomes its own tormentor. That's why the Stoic practice of silence isn't weakness, it's strategy. Silence turns chaos into clarity. Distance turns emotion into perspective. Boundaries turn exhaustion into strength. You don't owe your time to everyone who demands it. You don't owe your peace to those who thrive on conflict. You don't owe explanations to those determined to misunderstand you. You owe yourself calm. You owe yourself focus. You owe yourself the grace of choosing stillness over struggle. Every call you don't answer, every rumor you don't chase, every message you let fade without reply, these are acts of quiet rebellion. You're no longer feeding the noise that starves your soul. Peace doesn't mean a life without problems. It means a life built on boundaries. It's knowing when to walk away, when to be silent, when to let people's opinions dissolve into air. Sometimes the most powerful response is none. Sometimes the best revenge is becoming better. Sometimes the truest closure is moving forward without a word. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself each morning, "Today I will meet with interference, ingratitude, arrogance, deceit, jealousy, and selfishness. Yet they cannot harm me." That's the creed of the calm mind. It's not about avoiding the storm. It's about standing within it unshaken. When you stop giving energy to what doesn't deserve it, you begin to see how little power those things ever had. So protect your peace with the discipline of a Stoic warrior. Guard it with silence. Defend it with distance. Preserve it with choice. Because once you lose your peace, you lose yourself. And if you keep listening to every voice around you, you'll never hear the one within. Step back, breathe, let the noise pass like wind across a mountain. It cannot touch what is rooted deep. Focus only on what endures, your purpose, your virtue, your inner stillness. Everything else will fade with time, but peace, real peace, is eternal if you learn to protect it. Advancing to the 7th chapter. This is where unseen strength begins to take form. There are moments in life when you feel invisible, when your effort goes unnoticed, your kindness unturned, your loyalty unanswered. You give and it echoes into silence. You stay and others leave. You keep carrying people in your heart who have long forgotten your name. It's a quiet kind of pain, the kind that doesn't shout but sits inside you heavy and patient. Yet here's the truth. The Stoics understood. Nothing you do with virtue is ever wasted, even if the world doesn't witness it. Imagine a craftsman working alone through the night, carving something beautiful that no one may ever see. He doesn't rush, doesn't boast, doesn't seek an audience. He works because excellence is its own reward. That's how life often unfolds. You labor in silence. You endure without recognition. And yet the universe in its perfect order keeps its balance. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The world is change and life is opinion. What others think of your worth does not define the value of your work." The Stoic finds comfort in knowing that the unseen effort still matters because virtue exists for its own sake, not for applause. I once knew a man who felt forgotten by the people he'd helped most. He had supported friends through hardship, stayed loyal in their storms, and yet when his own struggles came, the silence was deafening. One day he told me, "Maybe I'm not meant to be seen." But time revealed something deeper. His quiet endurance built a kind of strength the ungrateful could never touch. Months later, opportunities came from unexpected places. Friendships formed from sincerity. And he understood what the Stoics meant by divine reason. Logos, that invisible order guiding all things. What felt like rejection was redirection. What felt like loss was protection. Epictetus taught that everything has two handles, one by which it may be borne, another by which it cannot. When people leave, you can grab the handle of resentment or the handle of understanding. One makes you bitter, the other makes you wise. Sometimes what looks like betrayal is simply nature's way of clearing space for the right souls to arrive. Seneca reminded us we suffer more in imagination than in reality. The pain of being unseen often comes from the stories we tell ourselves that we are unworthy, unimportant, forgotten. But the truth is simpler. People see only as far as their own awareness allows. Their blindness is not your measure. There's an order in the world that the Stoics called providence, the quiet intelligence of fate. It removes what hinders even when our hearts resist. The friend who left, the door that closed, the silence that hurt, each was a necessary subtraction. The Stoic does not cling to what departs. He trusts the flow of reason through all things. When you stop chasing those who walked away, you create room for those meant to walk beside you. When you stop worrying about being recognized, you begin to live in alignment with your own nature. The peace that follows is unlike any other. You no longer depend on others to validate your worth. You no longer grieve every departure. You begin to see rejection as refinement, polishing your character, sharpening your clarity, and suddenly the stillness you feared becomes sacred. You understand that the universe keeps a perfect account even when human eyes do not. So let go of what is not yours to fix. Let go of those who could not stay. Let go of caring about the things already handled by the greater order of nature. The Stoic trusts that what is meant for him will meet him and what is not will pass. Every loss carries within it an unseen favor, and every silence holds a lesson. When you accept that, you no longer walk in bitterness. You walk in quiet faith. From here, gratitude replaces grievance. The weight lifts. You realize that peace was never lost. It was simply waiting for you to stop holding on to what was gone, because the universe always sees what others don't. And when you align with it, you find something deeper than approval. You find serenity. Entering the 8th chapter. This is where strength takes a quieter form, not in holding tighter, but in learning to release. The world often mistakes caring less for indifference, but the Stoics knew better. Caring less doesn't mean your heart hardens. It means it becomes wise. It means you stop bleeding for causes that do not grow you. It means you stop handing your peace to people who mistake your gentleness for weakness. It means you choose your battles as a philosopher would, with clarity, not emotion. Now imagine standing at the edge of a field after a storm. The air is still, but scattered across the ground are the broken branches you once tried to hold up. You exhausted yourself propping up what nature itself meant to let fall. That's what happens when you care too much for things that were never meant to last. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." The essence of caring less is simply caring rightly. You withdraw your attention from what you can't control and pour it into what you can. Your virtue, your discipline, your peace. I once knew a woman who lived her life trying to fix everyone. Friends, co-workers, family. She carried their chaos like a sacred duty. Every time they fell, she rushed to lift them. Every time they disappointed her, she forgave before they asked. But years later, when she finally sat in stillness, she realized she was empty. Her compassion had no boundaries, and what began as strength became suffering. One evening, she read a passage from Epictetus that changed her life. We suffer not from the events in our lives, but from our judgment about them. It wasn't her love that drained her. It was her attachment to the idea that she could save everyone. From that day on, she began practicing the art of restraint, not closing her heart but protecting it. The Stoics believed that true strength is not found in endless endurance but in wise selection. Seneca wrote, "The man who suffers before it is necessary suffers more than is necessary." You do not need to carry the weight of every problem, nor respond to every call. The wise do not waste their energy in every direction. They channel it like a river, narrow and forceful, cutting through stone. When you care less about the noise, your focus sharpens. You see which battles are worth your effort and which are merely distractions disguised as duties. Ask yourself, how many of your worries come from things that do not matter? The opinion of strangers, the expectations of the ungrateful, the endless chase to prove your worth in a world that never stops asking for more. You can't fight every war and still expect to win the one within yourself. Each time you withdraw your energy from the meaningless, you create space for the meaningful. You begin to see what truly deserves your care, your family, your craft, your inner balance, your growth. These are the few things the Stoics would say are within your control, and they are enough. Caring less doesn't make you cold. It makes you free. It doesn't make you detached. It makes you deliberate. You stop running toward every fire because you've learned that not every flame deserves your water. You save your strength for what endures. The Stoics didn't love less. They loved wisely. They knew that misplaced emotion clouds judgment and that clarity is the highest form of compassion. So stand firm in what matters. Care deeply for your peace, your integrity, your purpose. Let the rest fall away. The one who tries to please the crowd loses himself. But the one who learns to care selectively becomes unshakable. In caring less, you become more centered, more aware, more powerful in your silence. Because true strength isn't in caring about everything. It's in knowing precisely what's worth your care and guarding it with the calm of a Stoic heart. Entering the 9th chapter, this is where courage no longer looks like fighting. It looks like leaving. There comes a time when staying silent becomes a form of self-betrayal, when trying to fix what's broken starts breaking you instead. You wake up one morning and realize the weight on your shoulders isn't responsibility, it's attachment. You've spent years holding together things that were never meant to be whole, and in that effort you've forgotten yourself. The Stoics called this a form of bondage, the kind that binds not your body but your mind. Now imagine standing in a room filled with people you've carried in your heart for too long. Some drained you. Some used your loyalty as leverage. Some hurt you and slept peacefully afterward. You've spent countless nights wondering what you did wrong, replaying moments, rewriting endings. But the truth is simpler and harder. Not everything that breaks is meant to be repaired, and not everyone who leaves deserves to return. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Let go of your thirst for approval and you will be free. Walking away is not weakness. It's wisdom earned through pain." I once knew a woman who thought love meant endurance. The longer she stayed, the stronger she was. She tolerated disrespect disguised as misunderstanding, neglect wrapped in excuses. When I asked her why, she said, "Because I'm the bigger person." But the Stoics would have reminded her that virtue has no need to prove itself through suffering. To stay in what destroys your peace is not strength. It's fear wearing moral clothing. One day she finally left. She didn't shout. She didn't explain. She simply walked out and closed the door. Months later, she said the most profound thing I've ever heard. "I thought I was healing others by staying, but I was really saving myself by leaving." Epictetus taught that freedom is the right to choose who and what you give power to. Every time you keep fighting battles that rob your calm, you surrender that power. Every time you explain yourself to those who refuse to understand, you devalue your truth. And every time you stay in rooms where your peace dies slowly, you abandon your duty to yourself. The Stoic way is not about isolation. It's about alignment. To walk away is not to reject the world. It's to return to your own nature. Ask yourself how much of your life has been spent seeking closure from people who offered you confusion. How many apologies have you whispered in your own mind for things that were never your fault? You're not selfish for stepping back. You're not cruel for choosing distance. You're not cold for wanting calm. You are simply remembering that your peace is your responsibility. And peace, as the Stoics taught, is not found in people. It's found in principle. Sometimes you must walk away not because you stopped caring, but because you finally understood that caring alone cannot fix what reason cannot reach. The Stoics believed in the discipline of letting go, of seeing clearly what serves your growth and what only feeds your chaos. Seneca once said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." Walking away is not avoidance. It's proof that you've learned when to stop giving energy to what no longer deserves it. From here, something shifts. The guilt fades. The noise quiets. You start to feel lighter, not because life got easier, but because you stopped carrying what was never yours. You begin to rebuild slowly, deliberately, with boundaries made of steel and grace. You stop being the bigger person when it means shrinking your soul. You stop mistaking tolerance for virtue. You begin to see that peace isn't a gift someone else can give. It's a discipline you practice every time you choose yourself. So walk away from what no longer feels right. Step back from those who drain your light. Let go of fixing others when it means fracturing your own spirit. The Stoic doesn't run from conflict. He simply refuses to live where chaos reigns. Because in the end, peace is not a place you find. It's a person you become. And the strength to walk away is the moment that transformation begins. Entering the final chapter, this is where everything you've endured begins to make sense. The noise fades, the masks fall, and what remains is the one truth you've been circling all along, the power of self-respect. There comes a moment when exhaustion becomes revelation, when you're too tired to keep proving, too drained to keep chasing, too aware to keep tolerating. That's when the transformation begins. You stop begging to be understood. You stop waiting for permission to exist. You stop apologizing for protecting your peace. And in that quiet refusal, your life starts to change. Now imagine standing in a hall of echoes where every opinion returns to you louder than your own voice, each one calling you by a name that isn't yours. You've been trying to answer them all to explain yourself into being seen. But as you stand there, something inside you whispers, "Enough." You turn away, and finally your thoughts speak louder than the crowd. That is self-respect, not arrogance, not pride. Just the moment when you decide that your energy, your time, and your spirit are not public property. Marcus Aurelius said, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know the truth." The Stoics understood what few dare to accept. When you stop caring about being approved by others, you begin to act in accordance with nature, your true nature. I once knew a man who spent years trying to earn his worth in other people's eyes. Every compliment lifted him. Every silence crushed him. He lived like a pendulum swinging between praise and doubt. But one day life humbled him. A business he built fell apart. People he trusted disappeared. For the first time there was no applause, just stillness. And in that stillness he began to rebuild, not from admiration but from principle. He started showing up because it was right, not because it would be seen. He began to measure his value by his discipline, not his image. Months later he said something I'll never forget. Losing their approval made me see that I was never lost. I was just buried under noise. That is the moment every Stoic lives, for the awakening from dependence on validation. Epictetus reminded, "Seek not to appear wise, but to be so." Self-respect often begins where misunderstanding starts. You'll be called distant for protecting your energy. You'll be called cold for setting boundaries. You'll be called difficult for no longer bending to chaos. But the Stoic knows that names and judgments are not the substance of the soul. What matters is the inner posture, the quiet integrity that no insult can shake. True strength is not in defending your worth to others, but in standing firm without needing them to agree. When you respect yourself enough to walk away from chaos, life rearranges around that choice. People who once tested your patience start to fall silent. Those who only valued your compliance will disappear. And though it feels lonely at first, the emptiness is not a void. It's space. Space for peace to return. Space for focus to grow. Space for real connection to find you. Seneca wrote, "Associate with those who may make you better, and welcome those whom you can make better. The rest is distraction, and distraction is the enemy of peace." Ask yourself, how many times have you accepted disrespect just to avoid confrontation? How many times have you allowed your silence to be mistaken for weakness? You owe yourself more than that. You owe yourself the dignity of saying no, the courage of distance, the grace of stillness. Because people treat you based on what you tolerate. The moment you stop shrinking, you begin to teach the world how to meet you. Some will rise to match your new standard. Others will fall away. Both outcomes are gifts. The Stoics believe that freedom is not granted. It is claimed through mastery of self. When you let go of the need to be liked, you become ungovernable. When you stop explaining your worth, you become untouchable. When you protect your peace, you become powerful in silence. Every limit you set is a quiet vow. I answer only to my reason. The world will test that declaration again and again through chaos, temptation, loneliness. But each time you hold the line, you strengthen your soul. You build a fortress not of walls, but of will. I remember an older woman once telling me peace costs something. She had lost friends, jobs, even relationships that couldn't survive her honesty. But her eyes were calm, her words measured, her presence steady. She didn't need to prove her strength. She had lived it. That is what self-respect does. It doesn't make you loud. It makes you rooted. It makes you choose silence over noise, boundaries over approval, and truth over comfort. So let go not in anger, but in understanding. Let go of the urge to fix everyone's pain. Let go of the compulsion to be understood by those committed to misunderstanding you. Let go of caring about opinions that add nothing to your peace. You are not selfish for guarding your energy. You are not unkind for stepping back. You are simply becoming who you were meant to be. Someone who no longer confuses suffering with love. Someone who no longer trades calm for company. Someone who knows that self-respect is not separation from the world, but alignment with your highest nature. Take a breath. Return to yourself. Stand steady in what's true. No more overthinking. No more pleasing. No more chasing what steals your serenity. Care deeply but wisely for your purpose, your family, your growth, your peace. The Stoics called it eudaimonia, the state of a soul in harmony with itself. And harmony cannot be found in the crowd. It begins the moment you withdraw from noise and return to the stillness within. This is where the journey ends and begins again, with self-respect as the compass, peace as the path, and reason as your only master. Because when you release what isn't yours, you begin to live what always was. If this message reached you, take a moment to breathe and let it sink in. Every lesson, every pause, every quiet realization you felt while listening is not just a reminder. It's a call to return home to yourself. The truth is, you've spent so much of your life reacting to what's outside that you've forgotten how powerful it feels to stand still within. This is your moment to reclaim that power, to stop chasing peace in others and start living it from the inside out. You are not what happens around you. You are what happens within you. The chaos of the world will always try to provoke, distract, and pull you away from your center. But a calm mind remains untouchable. When you learn to master your emotions, you no longer bend with every storm. You stand rooted, unshaken, watching the storm pass. That is the essence of Stoic strength, to remain composed when the world expects you to collapse. If something in this message spoke to your soul, hold on to it. Let it guide you through the moments when you feel pulled back into old habits. Because the path to inner mastery is not a single moment of clarity, but a daily practice of remembering your worth, your peace, and your control. Each day you are given a choice to react or to respond, to rush or to breathe, to lose yourself, or to return to who you truly are. So let this be your reminder. Peace is not passive. It is a choice, an act of strength, a discipline of the heart. You don't find it by running faster, arguing louder, or proving more. You find it when you stop defending your worth and start embodying it. Every time you choose calm over chaos, patience over impulse, silence over noise, you're building something unbreakable inside you. If this message has moved you, share it with someone who needs the same reminder. Someone standing where you once stood, trying to hold everything together. Sometimes all it takes is one moment of truth to shift the direction of an entire life. Leave a simple comment below as your reminder to yourself and to others walking this path. Write this: choose calm. Let it be your anchor today. And if you're walking this journey toward a stronger, quieter, wiser version of yourself, stay with us. Subscribe so you can keep growing alongside a community of minds that seek depth over noise, wisdom over reaction, truth over distraction. Every week we rise, we reflect, and we remind each other that control is not about suppressing what you feel, but about guiding it with reason and peace. You have carried enough, tried enough, cared enough. Now it's time to simply be, to trust that letting go does not mean losing but returning, to know that silence is not emptiness but space, the kind of space where your peace can finally breathe again. So when this video ends, don't rush away. Sit for a moment in the quiet that follows. Feel the stillness as it settles around you. That is where your true power lives. Not in the noise, not in the approval, but in the still center of your being. Remember, the one who masters himself cannot be mastered by the world. Stay calm, stay grounded, and keep walking your path of strength and clarity. Your next chapter begins with one decision to protect your peace as if your life depends on it. Because it does. And when you do, everything you were meant to become will begin to unfold quietly, powerfully, and exactly as it should.